Good morning students, how are you? I am Pradesha and today we will be studying standard 6 chemistry. Okay, so we started this chapter quite days before, and after many days we are back. So this is lesson 5th and we did discuss up to the requirements of separation of constituents of a mixture. We did study the types of mixtures, water mixtures, and sometimes in mixture these constituents are useful and sometimes they are unwanted and sometimes they are harmful, so they need to be separated. So it was the need of the separation. Now we will talk about today we will talk about how do we separate the constituents. So one by one we will see. Okay, so the first method is separating a solid from a solid. That means if all the components of a mixture are solid, then how do we need to separate them? So there are different ways. For example, the very common one is your hand picking. Hand picking, the unwanted things you remove by your hand, or the useful things you collect by your hand. For example, if you have some coins in your pocket and by chance it fell over the sand, so it gets mixed with the sand, so what do? You with your hand pick up those coins, because these coins are useful for you, yes, and the sand isn't, so you don't pick up the sand, you pick up the useful ones. Whereas in case of you might have seen about rice, this rice, sometimes this black things or the stone pebbles are present there, so you pick up remove these stone pebbles with your hand, or these black grains with your hand from the rice. So this is called hand picking. And the second process is sieving. Sieving, in the sieving we separate two types of solids, one which is very smaller in size and the one which is greater in size. So sieve in Hindi you can say as chalni. Chalni you might have seen, you sieve the floor, So sieving is a type of separating, is a process of separating mixtures which are different in size, especially one of them is very, very small in size. So this is your sieving. And the third one is winnowing. Winnowing, the mixtures are in such a way that one mixture is heavy and another mixture is very, very light. You might have seen the farmers, they take the wheat or the rice, the paddy grain, in a basket and they throw it from the top. It is given in your book. It is given in your book. One very good example is there here. An example of winnowing. So this photograph, it is there. You might have seen the people. This is called winnowing, in which the particles are heavy and another particles are very, very light. And then one more of the process of separating two different solids are your threshing. Threshing, this is also a very commonly used process, especially again by the farmers, when they want to separate a hard substance from a soft substance. For example, this paddy, this paddy, after it has been harvested, this paddy plants are struck on the stone. So the hard particles, the grains, they get separated from that soft hay. Okay, so this is called threshing. So these are some of the very common methods of separating solid from a solid mixture. And now the second process is separating insoluble solid from a liquid. So if the mixture is of a solid and a liquid, and if the solid is insoluble, sometimes we need to separate them. For instance, you might have made tea, or if not made tea, you might have seen your mother making tea. So what she does, she uses something like sieve, to filter. She uses a filtering device to separate the tea leaves from the tea. So tea leaves are insoluble in water. So what to do? It has to be separated. We are not going to drink the tea leaf. Yes. So similarly, there are different insoluble solid particles, that are there are various processes by which insoluble solid particles can be separated. So one of the very common example is our sedimentation and reconnection. Sedimentation, what do we do? In this, the solid particles which are mixed in the liquid, they are quite heavy. So this mixture is left undisturbed for a long time, and these heavy particles, they slowly settle down. They slowly settle down, and on the top, these solid particles, impure solid particles, they settle down at the bottom of the container. So on the top of the container, we can see the clear liquid, and this clear liquid, we can pour it in another container, and this process of pouring the clear liquid that has been obtained after sedimentation is called decantation. Sedimentation is the settling down of the impurities, whereas decantation is the transfer or pouring down of the clear water obtained after sedimentation. And after this it is done, there is one more process called loading. Loading is a process which is used in sedimentation. Sometimes the insoluble particles are very fine. Very fine means very fine. And since these insoluble solid particles are very fine, they don't settle down fast. It takes a long time for it to settle down, and we can't get the clear water. So what do? We put these potash alum, potash alum, in Hindi we say pitgiri, in water, and what happens is that this dissolves in the water, and after that it gets deposited. It gets deposited on these solid particles, fine solid particles which are present there, and since these gets deposited, this alum gets deposited on these fine particles. These fine particles get heavy, and when they get heavy, what happens is that obviously they are going to fall down. Means they will be settling down quite easily and in a faster manner. So loading makes sedimentation faster. How? By dissolving potash alum in the impure water. So this was about loading, and then we talked about filtration. Yes, when the impure particles are quite big enough to be separated, we can use filter paper. In order to separate the insoluble solid particles along with the water. Okay, we can separate it. And then we have churning. Churning is also a very nice process. In this, the fat content of the milk, it gets separated from the milk. You might have seen, the ladies, they take a bucket, in that milk is there, and in that milk, there is a rod, stick there, and the stick is turned around with what? The stick is turned around with the string, and that string is pulled like this, and when this wooden rod rotates, what happens? This fat gets stuck to it, and after it gets stuck, it keeps on sticking, and we see, this fat is separated, and that fat is called butter. So this churning is also a very good process, for obtaining insoluble solid particles from the liquid. Now the third process is your separation of soluble solid from its solution. So if a solid is there and it has to be separated from a liquid, then what can we do? So only thing is that we evaporate the liquid gets evaporated, and what happens is that the solid which has been dissolved, it remains there. This you might have seen very often. Whenever you boil water, what will happen? Whenever you boil water, what will happen? You will see that some salt content is always remaining at the later on. You will see in the container. So this is what about separating of soluble from its insoluble. Separating of soluble solid from its solution. This is done. Now the next topic is water is a universal solvent. Yes, this is a very important thing, important characteristic of water, that water is a universal solvent. Why? Because it is capable of dissolving the majority of the substances present in the nature. So you understand, very few liquid have this type of property, and therefore water being so special is called the universal solvent. Now when we are talking about water, there is a mixture of a liquid and a solid. So liquid which dissolves the solid is called solvent. What is solvent? Solvent is the liquid. Solvent is the liquid which is going to dissolve the solid, and solute is the solid which is going to be soluble in or dissolved in the solvent. So these are the two things. When they mix together, they are called solution. Solute plus solvent yields solution. Solute is the solid to be dissolved in the solvent, whereas solvent is the solid which is going to dissolve the solute. Which is going to dissolve the solute. So this solution, this mixture is called solution. So when we talk of solution, we also talk about solubility. So what is solubility? The maximum mass of the solute that can be dissolved in 100 grams of solvent at any specified temperature is called its solubility. So we talk of solubility, whether this solubility is the characteristic of what? Is it the characteristic of solute or is it the characteristic of solvent? So solubility is the characteristic of solute. Okay, solubility is the characteristic of solute. So what is the mass? The maximum mass of the solute that is that can be dissolved in a particular solvent at a specified temperature. This is called our solubility. So a little more portion is left out. Small portion is there. Separation. More than one methods of separation that we will discuss in the next part of the video. But still today I have given you some homework, so please do that work. And if you have any problem, please let me know. Okay. So thank you today and have a nice day.